We're right to go? Okay. Thank you everyone for your attendance. I declare the meeting open, and the meeting will be audio recorded, and those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements. There are to be no other recordings of this meeting without the prior authorisation of the committee. Are there any apologies?
None recorded. None recorded to me.
That's fine. Well, I just see the committee were all in attendance. Declarations of interest. I think Sue has a standing one, which we all know about. Sue.
Yes, and also can I just mention there's sound coming out of this computer, which is okay. But yes, I have a standing one.
Okay.
Do I need to oh, still going.
How's that going now?
I think there's still an echo, but should I mention what my disclosure
Well, I
is?
suppose it should be, but I think we all sort of know. I think it probably
Yes.
would be better if you
It's
do.
being a Movie Road resident and my husband
right.
being an advocate for the water system out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. So it's so duly noted. Any public participation? There being none, can we move on to the business items? Infrastructure service reports, ISC 4.1 on page 2. Philip, it's over to you, is it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you. All right, so our water supply treatment improvement pathway update. So all the bits and pieces we're working on in that space. We've got the IWCM, so we received the signed funding deed from DPI, so that gives us some money through the Safe and Secure Water Fund. That's $215,000 worth of funding from the state government to go towards about $450,000 worth of work. So it's a substantial body of work, and it's good that we've been able to get that money to go towards it as well. So we can now officially engage Public Works to start that process, and the completion date at the moment is nominated for June 2022. The drinking water quality risk assessment workshop. So we did that at the end of last year. We got the output paper from the consultants, which is with us to review. So we'll provide something back to either this committee or council with the outcome of that report, and the consultant that were engaged by Health have also passed that on to Health themselves. So the UV pre-chlorination and fluoride project. So water team's still putting together the final tender and specs for that. So it's taking a little longer than anticipated, but when we've got that put to bed, we can go to tender for that project and get essentially the stage 1 improvements underway. Similarly, for the intake improvements for the pump station on Aberdeen, on the Hunter River in Aberdeen, we're getting close to getting a tender ready to go to market to do the first lot of improvement works down there, which is essentially pump replacement and electrical improvements at the site.
Yeah, could I say the soil conservation work that has been completed?
Yes, so I don't have it listed there. So the rock flume there at Aberdeen, yes. The civil works have been completed. The fencing is starting this week. We have agreement with us and local land services and the property owner in terms of where the fence is going to go and how the vegetation is going to be maintained. The size of that structure is bigger than originally planned, which was always a risk because Soil Conservation Services didn't really know how big that would have to be until they started removing the vegetation and getting in there. So that does mean that the final impact on that property and the final easement cost will be a bit more than originally thought.
So at this stage, the extra funds that the LLS put in and the council put in will not be sufficient. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so the part to come, which will be the easement purchase, which will be out of the sewer fund, we'll be
Okay.
funding that. That's yet to be determined, but it will be a bit more than what we originally anticipated.
Okay.
But essentially the works are completed.
Okay, thank you.
The drought management emergency response plan. So council last month voted to reduce our restrictions, and we're sort of waiting on the other councils to do that. I believe Muswellbrook has also endorsed that reduction to level 1. I'm not exactly sure when the Singleton council meeting is next, but the anticipation is that they'll vote the same way, and then all 3 shires will reduce our restrictions from the 3rd of May. Other tasks. And so the drought management plan itself is it's still planned to be done by the 3 councils. We're sort of waiting on Singleton Council at the moment with the scope of works.
Could I ask this question about the the level 1? There has been concerns expressed at Merriwa, just not going on to level 1, what's been on level 1, but the actual times, the hours, could that be revised?
So the revisions of the specific restrictions, so what's you have to do at each level, that will be part of this new plan.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's just the
Otherwise, you'd be going through and you'd be picking out a little bit, and each time you'd have to come back to council to do that.
Yeah, no, understood it. It's just the revision of the actual times that you can water and that sort of thing. Seeing perhaps could be better works. Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question about when did we create an alliance with the other 2 councils?
I'm not sure the exact date. It was some years ago through the chair, before my time.
I thought there was something to do that back in 2018. That's before your time. Yeah.
We look into that because I can't remember doing it in this term, and I think that this, given that this term was the drought that, everyone will talk about for 100 years, I think we need to talk because the Muswellbrook and Singleton Shires are vastly different to our issues. And I don't think that they fully comprehend what we need to do.
So through the chair, the alliance was about the provision of water and sewer services, not just drought-related items. It's sort of formed predominantly because we're the 3 council areas in the Hunter that aren't sort of under the umbrella of Hunter Water Corp. There is a charter that was due to be updated. I believe that time has come and gone. So at the moment, I guess it's sort of carrying on in the spirit of working together more than a formalised alliance, but we're still sort of referring back to works that are done together as, alliance works. It is something that can be reviewed.
Al, there is some lunch over there too, I might remind you. You sure?
Okay.
Thank you. Keep going.
So just a few other bits and pieces. So annual return for the Aberdeen sewer plant was submitted. EPA conducted a site visit at Merriwa Sewage Treatment Plant to see how we're going in regards to our pollution reduction management plan, which is part of our licence for that site. Dam Safety New South Wales carried out dam safety management system audit on Murrundi Dam. And we've got a few actions that'll come out of that when we get sort of the formal response from them. Nothing too scary. That's it for those items. If there's nothing else on that, we can go to the attachment.
Perhaps if you're finished, any questions on the items that Philip has read? Otherwise, we'd like to turn over to page 7. The activities update. Are there any questions or comments? I have one on 11, which is one that I ask most times. Castless sewerage system, how are we going there? Cardno has been engaged, but the cost thereof has not been reduced.
No, not yet. No, we're still we're still tracking on that. So they're still progressing the detailed design work, and we're still reviewing other alternatives. But we will reach a point very soon where we need to have some more serious conversations about how we're going to fund that scope of works.
I think so, yes. Okay.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chair, with respect to Castor's sewage system? So when do we think this might, through you, Mr. Chair, will this happen? Because it's been a long time I've been a councillor for 4.5 years, and the Castor sewage system has been pending pretty much that time. So is this likely to not actually happen?
Through the chair, I don't want to say that it may not happen, but it is dependent on getting a funding model that works and is affordable. So that's the real trick at the moment. And that's something that we don't have an answer for. We're still trying to chase additional funds for that. We've got requests out there to try and bolster our external funding for that project. But in the meantime, we're moving ahead and progressing with the steps that we need to take in any case to deliver it. So we don't want to hold it up from that perspective. So that's still progressing. But yeah, as I said, we will reach that. We'll come to a lockerhead where we won't be able to proceed unless we've sorted out exactly where those dollars are going to come from. And that has been agreed to by council. At the moment, the adopted budget won't cover the scope of works that we're continuing to design. That's where we are at the moment.
I suggest
Sorry.
also that the the current predicament, shall I say, of the health aspects in cashless, I think will be a big bearing where we can go to the government and say, look, this is unhealthy, because it's not that none of those systems are working correctly. Some of them may be, but other than that, I think that, yeah, it will have to be funded differently, because we I think we're 1.2, is it 1.1 or 1.2 from the government? But then the rest of it, it's up. The last I heard, it was over $4 million or $4.9 million
Potentially.
So it's big costs, and I think that we need to anyway. The health aspects, I believe, are the ones that we would probably be able to put forward. That would be the strongest argument that the government have to step up and fund that additional cost or go close to it.
Yes, so through Mr. Chair, this has been pending since before I became a councillor, because when I door knocked in Cassis, the publican at the time wanted to know what was happening, because at the time he was putting in eco cabins, which he was going to put the self-composting loos in, but he'd been told he wouldn't, if when council went to the sewage system, he would then have to come online with the sewage system. So he's since upped and left. And I just think the uncertainty makes it very difficult for casters to get on, whether, in their private lives and their business lives. So will we be advocating to the government that we need this funded? Because clearly that's a lot of money for a small shire council. But it's, as you say, it's essential for health benefits.
Look, I agree, and I think we have made representation, but I think that's our strongest argument. And the fact that it's a huge cost, which I don't believe that the shire can do on its own. But I think also that, as I notice in the shall we say, the wish list to the prospective candidates, it's something that needs to be certainly propagated and pursued. Yes, when we went to the cashless people and told them that yes, that they got some funding for this, that was fine. But there's just so many things that really I don't know why that was only the government, or what proposition was put to the government in order just to get the 1.2 million. But obviously it was not scoped correctly, because otherwise we wouldn't be in the predicament we are now. But the point is, this is what we are now. We've got to go to the government and just say, look, this can't continue. And I agree. We need to do that. Okay. All right. Thank you, Phil. Continue.
So I think we're in the attachment now, are we? Or?
Yep. Any others? That's 7, 8, page 8. Any concerns or
yes,
comments?
just on reference 25 on page 8 with the sewer pump station and mains for the airport precinct. How is that tracking? Because I believe there have been some issues out at the airport with some of the other business owners out there.
Through the chair, none of the issues at the airport are related to that component of works. It's just the sewage pump station component, which isn't impacting anything else currently.
So that query is another matter. Is
Yes,
it?
they're
Yeah.
not related to
Okay,
that
thank you.
item of work.
Thank you. At page 8, we finish with page 8. We'll turn over to page 9. 37 to 43, do we have any concerns or comments? If not, page 10, continuing on. Otherwise, we'll turn over to page 11, the last one. Water main upgrade. So is there anything you can comment on that? Just as it needs attention. Perhaps Sam or Gavin, you might be able to comment on that. Is it what's the works in progress? How is it progressing now? Is it?
Sorry, which one are you referring to?
That's
Mr. Chair?
on page 11, 49.
Just in terms of the schedule, so we're just behind our target for
I
that
see.
work. That's work that the water team's doing internally.
Okay, that's fine.
So it tends to be an item of work that after the fires are put out, that they come back to when they get a break
Okay.
in the weather. So there's
Got it.
yeah.
All right. There's no big hold up. All right. No further comments or questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Could I have a seconder, please? Okay. Any dissent? There being no dissent, the recommendation is passed. I'd like to turn over now to page 12, please. ISC 4.2. Sam, you
Thank
have
you,
the
Chair.
floor. Thank you.
Bit of an update on where the works crews are at. So we've made a start on the MR62. 2 sections are underway there. The one on Owens Gap and the other on the Car Springs, the Button Bridge end. Both projects are tracking okay at this point.
Sam, could I just ask you, I noted the coming across this morning and the material that you were using, you've excavated some material and stockpiled it on the side, which is good. The material you're using is really some that comes out of one of those cuttings that you're using. And now, is that sufficient to form a good base?
So through the chair, to yourself, I guess, the subgrade will have to be stabilised.
Okay.
That's where we're at. So the material that we cut out of the cutting was a select fill to bring it up to level. Now that we've done that, we have to go through and stabilise it.
With what?
Cement.
Cement?
Yep.
Right, okay. All
Yep.
right.
So it'll be
Yeah,
cement.
because it's on, as we know it's on black soil.
Yep.
Black soil has a horrible habit of moving.
Yep.
Not in the right directions at times.
So initially we were hoping to get away with not having to stabilise it, but yeah, the more we work that ground, the more the water's pumping up to the surface. So yeah, we're going to have to stabilise it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you have it in hand. Thank you.
So that's yeah, the Bunnan Road. The road safety program, that's the guardrail replacement and the shoulder widening. So we commenced the guardrail replacement on the weekend. The contractor started Saturday. He'll work through this week, then he'll have a break and then he'll come back. So you'll see bits and pieces done. You know, sections where we've marked out on the road that haven't been completed, but the contractor will return and do those sections.
And so that's quite separate to the widening of it, widening of the shoulders.
Yeah, there's so the road safety program includes the MR 105 Gundy Road, MR 62, which is Bunnan Road, and Willow Tree, MR 358. So those works are to be done on those 3 roads. So yes, it's separate to the pavement widening and strengthening.
So the MR 358 would not be going up the mountain, it would be those areas beforehand and on the other road, is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other project, Tullong Road rehab, that's progressing okay. We've done 90% of the drainage works out there and widen the shoulders. So the next stage of that will be to do the gravel overlay. Waverley Street curb and gutter, that's all but complete. Basically, they're just backfilling at this stage, fitting out the stormwater, and then in the coming weeks that'll be sealed and complete. Yep.
Okay.
Beddington Street footpath, that's going to plan at this stage. So I think they did their first pour on the footpath this morning, and they'll do one again tomorrow and Thursday. And then they'll just keep on progressing. The program is probably about 10 days to complete those works.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, look, I did have a conversation, as I think I emailed you people regarding that, and I just asked for patience. We are aware that there is some inconvenience, but I wanted to make this very clear, and I made it very clear at the meeting last night, the economic development, that access was not cut off. And I was in town over the Easter period, and I can assure you there was a lot of people outside. There were strangers walking up and down that corridor, attending to those shops and to the RSL. So, yeah, there is an inconvenience, and I also the concern that was expressed to me, we both agreed that, look, the outcome is going to be good, much better, and so we agreed that if we could just exercise some patience, that this will be very much beneficial to Merriwall. Okay.
Yeah, that's about it for me, except for
Yes.
Works upgrades.
The road safety program. Now that was only was that going to identify some of the areas that need attention, or are we going to get some line marking, especially on that MR62? There's some centre road. What was that? What did that entail?
This program was specific to guardrail replacement and widening. So it was 650 for guardrail replacement, and 250. Yeah, so it was 250 for road widening.
Right.
So yeah, it identified those two activities. However, we have done a safety audit on that road as well.
Okay.
So separate to that safety.
Will that come up to the next infrastructure meeting?
Yeah, it can.
Would that be available then? Available to council? Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on that matter?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, I'd just like to congratulate the staff. I drove through Bunnan Road twice over the last week. It's always tidy, it's clean. The workers are always very courteous to the people driving through, and I actually saw a truck going through. It was all taken care of really well. So very, very proud to be part of the Upper Hunter Shire team when those things go on. So it's good. Yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Look, I concur with that. I travel that road probably 2, sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes a bit less. But I found the same thing. And I also want to commend Sam also and Gavin, mostly Sam, on the road that you're doing on the Ringwood Road. And that was some work there that I had complained about a pothole. But anyway, they're starting at the top and working down that section, probably 50 metres, which means that will be renewed, which is very good. And once again, it was great to see that works have been taking place. So it comes,
So that's part of our local road heavy patching program.
Yeah, that was good. Okay. Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I have a question on page 23. Are we doing those now, or Can I just raise my question?
No, and I think that's I just turning over there now, yes.
So reference number 3, the adverse event plan. What does this entail?
Through the chair, sorry, I don't have a lot of information on that particular program. That's with who's that with? Jackie's looking after that one, so I can get you some more information if you like.
Is that like, through you, Mr. Chair, is that like obviously disasters, floods, fires, hurricanes?
From what I understand, yes.
Yes, thank you. I would like some more information.
We can,
Mr. GM.
yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we can provide more information, but in short, we've been looking at building an adverse event plan, which will look at those things that you've just mentioned about disaster management. We have a disaster plan, which is a requirement under the state emergency management planning legislation. But this is going a little bit further and producing a disaster plan relevant to our area, more for an internal purpose than an externally facing disaster or emergency management plan. I don't have all the details on me, but we can probably provide a report back to council that'll explain that. And I think I explained to councillors too that one of the tools that we're looking at is a new tool that's been developed by a Hunter Joint organisation, which is a web-based tool that pulls all the various support agencies' information together into one single location for disaster management. We're looking at how we can use that tool to work with this disaster event plan as well, so that the plan doesn't act separately, but is in conjunction with any web developed tools that we're putting together at the moment.
Okay. That's good. All right. Any further questions or comment on page 23? If not, we'll just move on to page 24. Item 10, Merriwood Driver Reviver. Sam, how are we going there? It must be very close to starting date.
Chair, we have started. So the earthworks for the slab has been undertaken. The next step is to pour the slab. Yeah, so that'll happen not next week, but the following week.
Okay.
The building, one of the local builders is putting that together as we speak. So, yep.
That's good news. Yeah, thank you. Been a long road, but look, that's great. The outcome is what we're looking at. All right. Finish at page 24. Move over to page 25, please. Item 14, the bus shelters. I did take a drive around Merriwood. There's 2 slabs there, which I think that's what they'll be there for, up in Mackenzie Street.
Yes, that's correct.
Good. Well,
Again,
they've been down for a little while, so they
last school holidays they went down, and it's hoped that
through the chair, please, through the chair, and also turn your phone on.
What I said was, it looks like there's 2 to be selected from Arundai too.
Right, I'm good. Okay. How did we go with the cashless one? Have they been poured, or are they going to be poured when we do that other work up there?
the bus shelter will be poured in conjunction with the other footpath and works out there, yes.
Yep, okay, that's great, yeah. What about the shed, the actual shed, erection of the shelter shed? Is that programmed for the next while? The slabs are down.
Oh, the sheds, the shelters themselves.
Yes.
They're currently under construction. I think there is 3 units made.
Yes.
And it's hoped that the Merriwall ones will be erected before school goes back.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
That's really good. Thanks for that. Thank you. Any other questions on page 25? We move on to page 26. I guess my answer there is on 21 that the slab will be poured when the revitalisation town and those other amenities are going to go to cashless. Is there any idea of when those things are going to happen for cashless? Timeline?
So cashless, where we're at. So demolition for one of the toilet blocks will happen next week. So the local contractor out at Merriwar will finish the curb and gutter or the footpath in Beddington Street, and then he'll move on out to Castellis to start those works. So, you know, within a fortnight or so, you'll see some action out that way.
That's very good. Good news. Thank you. Turn over then to page 27. Works delivery, works in progress for Scone, Murrurundi and Merriwar. How are we going with that Coobabulga Road? Were you able to do anything with that, Sam?
Through the chair, no, not to date. Basically, the Merriwar graders are on construction jobs. However, I have got a contract grader operator starting next week, or if it's not next week, it'll be the following week. So he'll be able to address some of those issues.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And how did you get on with that matter with water coming off the side of the road there through, I think it was Dalkeith, onto Scott Whitten's place? How did you get on with that?
Oh, there's been no additional work since we last spoke about it.
Right. Okay. Any anticipated?
We may be able to do something when the crew's up there doing some work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a gradie in that area at this point in time.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, as long as we keep it on the agenda, we can perhaps address it at that time. Okay. Page 27. Any comments or questions? All right. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Any dissension? There being no dissension, the recommendation is passed. Okay, ISC 4.3 on page 28, Strategic Projects Update. Chris, you have the floor. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first, I just lost my page, I'm sorry, 28. The first project there is Untitled Brook Bridge Replacement. All the works there are complete, apart from the construction of the reconstruction of the boundary fences, because we had to move those back to allow the construction and the road widening to happen. So they're happening this month, and they'll be completed by the end of April. And purchase order's been raised for those, so they'll happen now. So that will be the completion of that. As you're aware, we had the official bridge opening on the 27th of February. Yeah, so I've been out there and had a look, and all those topsoil batters are all grassed up now that it's been raining, so it looks good. And I had a meeting with both landowners either side of the road week before last, and they were both extremely happy with the outcome and how the job looks. So congratulations, Sam, your team, the way that they finished that works off there. It was really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions on Untitled Brook Bridge? Next one is Cameron Bridge. The tender was advertised prior to Christmas for the construction of the bridge, and we have the pre-tender site meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. We've had a look, and there's been 30 odd companies at least look at the tender, and within that are all of the regular bridge building companies that have tendered for us in the past. So that's on track there. And so, you know, within the next, the tender closes on the 4th of May, and so I'm trying to get the report before the May council meeting, so for the acceptance of the tender.
Chris, was there any realignment allowed within the road corridor, the approaches to the bridge?
The bridge it's essentially in the same location, but it's just moved, it's shifted a little bit to allow better construction of the approaches.
Yeah.
but it's a tight squeeze to get, you know, a good result in there in the space that we had. But yeah, it's shifted about the bridge width
Right, okay.
on the far side of the bridge, on the Rural side of the bridge. What
Okay.
direction goes south? Yeah, it's shifted about a whole bridge width south.
So that will actually make it as best, the access as best as possible.
Yeah, that's right. With the maintenance of the existing sidetrack throughout the construction. And that sidetrack bridge, it's been washed away a couple of times in recent storm events. We're going to get that lifted and secured so that it won't get washed away. It can get overtopped. So, you know, Brook might be blocked off for a day or two. Once the water goes down, they'll be right again.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, you would be conversant with that particular bridge and the approaches thereof?
Yeah, all I can say is it's about time.
It's happening. Okay. All right.
Next is Moon and Brook Road. I'll speak to Moon and Brook Road upgrade and Hunter Road upgrade as one, because at the moment we're dealing with them as one. The tender has been closed for a few weeks now. We've done the tender assessment and we have recognised the preferred tenderer, and tomorrow I'll be completing the report to council so that we'll go to April's council meeting for approval to award that tender. So that being the case, we'll be able to award that's the tender for the design for those two sections of road. So we'll be able to award the design of those at the end of April.
Could I just ask a question, please, Mr. Chair? Why is Moon and Brook Road being upgraded? Not why is it being upgraded? Why is the road being widened?
Mr. Chair, there are some sections of the road where I guess it's trapped in between some steep cuttings and the brook itself, which may not be able to be widened very much, but there are some other sections. The majority of it is through flatter sections within a nice wide road reserve that will be able to widen the road to the new standard that and put new drainage sections in so that it will be able to handle the traffic that is envisaged to come over Barrington Tops Forest Road, including coaches, tour coaches.
Is through you, Mr. Chair, is that wise that coaches come over the tops, the Barrington top? There's been a landslide, hasn't there, on the Gloucester side? Is that right? Is that road being impassable?
Yeah, the Gloucester side's currently closed. Oh, well, it was last week. I presume it's still closed. And so there's no through traffic from Gloucester across over the top now. I couldn't talk about the suitability of coaches immediately, but I would imagine the long term is that, you know, maybe if, you know, the road continues to be upgraded progressively from both sides at some stage, it would be suitable.
And is there anything else planned for the Barringtons, or like what? So it's not a major industry, it's tourism that we're widening the road. I'd have to go back to, I guess some of the staff have got a bit of a longer history than I have, but I would imagine it's both servicing the existing population of that region as well as the tourism industry that is serviced through that road. So with the widening through you, Mr. Chair, so on Moonan Brook Road, exactly where is that? Is that after Moonan or before Moonan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is just after Moonan Flat.
Mm-hmm.
So you go through Moonan Flat and then you get to the fork in the road where if you go to the left, you go to Elliston. If you go to the right, you go to Gloucester. So it's that section of road from that intersection.
So the flat bit.
Yeah. Yes. It's not up Barrington Forest Road, apart from we're doing the first 150 metres of the intersection, just to make it all a nice approach to that intersection. But it's the flat section of Moon and Brook Road out to the camping ground.
Right, and because I have driven that road a bit, so I'm curious as to why, I'm still curious as to why it's through you, Mr. Chair, it needs widening. Because it's quite problematic, you think, for bigger vehicles.
Mr. Chair, can I maybe just intervene, and maybe Chris, can you clarify? It's not just pavement widening, so we're not just talking about the 6 metre wide black stuff on the road. Sometimes the road reserve has to be widened because we're widening radiuses and presumably doing some drainage works to the side of the actual travel pavement. All of that requires what we call road widening. So it's not just the black travel lanes that are being widened. Can you clarify if that's correct, Chris?
Would I be able to ask Gavin to comment on this, please, Mr. Chair?
So,
Gavin, can you?
Yeah, so-
Mike, please.
yep.
Through the chair, that's essentially right what the general manager's been saying. It will be some road widening in some sections where we can, and a lot of it will be to do with drainage and making sure the road and the road users are safe. So widening cuttings, gabion baskets on steeper fields to make sure that there's no chance of anyone going off the edge, and putting some guardrail, some substantial guardrail in there as well to make sure no one goes into the gullies or creeks as well.
So with the road widening, through you, Mr. Chair, so where it's not necessarily the pavement for the road, will that then get treed over? Would it be vegetated, or how does it look afterwards? Because it's a very pretty part of the road.
Yeah, generally what happens is, through the chair, sorry, what happens will be we'll do the construction works, and after that there will be, there's 2 options. We can get a product called hydromulch, and they spray a bituminous material with seeds and mulch and fertiliser in there to make sure it does grass up, and then we can also plant some local tree species as well in there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, I will also add that coaches already use both Barrington Forest and Moon Brook Road, so we're trying to make it as safe as possible for those vehicles to come through.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to add to that Barrington Road is used a lot by fodder from east to west. It's used a lot for cattle transport, now east to west. And just going to clarify, the buses do use it. And just to add to that money from the federals last week, the 4.7 million, that's the actual head to Barrington. That's additional to the other money.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the last project, or second last, sorry, on this one is the Murrumbidgee Memorial Gates. I've had further meetings with the RSL sub-branch, with the stonemason since last meeting, and I'm expecting pricing tomorrow, and so we should be able to start moving on the actual works on that very soon.
That would not take place or before Anzac Day, because that's only just up the
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have to take place before Anzac Day.
No, it probably would be better until after, my suggestion. Yeah, anyway, that's for you to decide. Okay.
And the independent living units at Murrumbidgee, the builders commenced on site. Wet weather delays have caused a problem, as they have just about everywhere. Practical completion date, 6th of July. Any questions on that?
Any questions, yes, on any of the comments?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. The maintenance balance, the 98,000 for the Liverpool Lodge, we'll use 5,000 of that for the ineligible costs incurred, and that's fine. That's what it's there for. Can we, and it's probably better for the corporate services, but I'll ask it here anyway. Can the funds be invested to create a future fund for the Liverpool Lodge, instead of just sticking in at RA and having it at 0.07%?
Mr. GM.
I'll need to give that some consideration. I think what you're asking is that capital funds be transferred into operational budget, and I just need to have a look at how that might pan out. Let me talk to our corporate services people and just about the accounting treatment of that.
Yeah, I just think, this 98,000 is specifically for Liverpool Lodge, let's give ourselves a chance at keeping it maintained. So if it can stand on its own 2 feet, it should.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments on those matters? I'll call for a mover and a seconder. I'm sorry, mover and a seconder. Seconded. The mayor seconded. Any dissension? There being no dissension, the recommendation is passed. I'd like to turn over to page 35, ISC 4.4. Phil, you have the floor. Have we all got a copy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Everyone got a copy?
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's start.
You want to run us through the spreadsheet?
Yeah, we'll go through the spreadsheet. Yeah, we can do it pretty quickly. And also gives us a chance to look at some of the things. Okay, turn over to page 2, items 1 to 48. Any comments or questions on that page?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Fleet management and number 19, this is a perennial question of mine. With the plant purchases, have we commenced electric vehicle purchasing?
Through the chair, the short answer is no. The longer answer is that's only because there hasn't been any suitable plant purchase that could have been an electric vehicle. That's still covered in, when new plan is required, that assessment is made from that sustainability aspect, which has been talked about before. But yeah, there hasn't been anything recently, but we're also heading into the next year's Depot looking to lease a lot of plant as well. So, but it's the same outcome as it's assessed at that time. There hasn't been any recent investment in electric vehicles, though, no.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So with the, I'm not sure the counts, like the mayor perhaps, and staff with cars, are they electric or hybrids, or have we even started doing anything like that?
Through the chair, there are some hybrid cars in the fleet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the mayor's car's hybrid, but to be honest, it does 36 kilometres to the charge, which doesn't get me to Scone.
No.
But I do use it. I charge it at home. Every time I go home, I do charge it. So I get nearly back to Scone on a charge. And then I've either got to take it across to the charging station or go back home and charge it again.
So an electric vehicle might be a solution to that, because obviously 36 kilometres isn't very far. That wouldn't get you far even if you lived around here. So would we look at, like, there are good second-hand electric vehicles that are on the market. Would we consider that through you, Mr. Chair?
Through the chair, I don't want to answer any questions on behalf of the fleet.
Okay. So where would be a better place to ask this question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just on that, when we did open the charging over in the back of Campbell's Corner, NRMA did come up with a full electric car, and it did about 500 k's to a charge. That probably make double the cost of a normal car, but that would probably make reasonably sense. But for the one I've got, it's not a lot of benefit.
Yeah, just to add to that, look, the Corporate Services Committee might be the best place to ask that question. I guess my observation is that most of the electric vehicles being provided on the market are aimed for that. They're the small vehicle to begin with, because obviously weight penalises distance. So most electric cars are built to fairly light standards. Most of the vehicles we're pursuing for motor vehicle purposes around the Shire are generally dual cabs and four-wheel drives, which doesn't have a strong electric market at this stage. But maybe we can ask that question at the Corporate Services meeting and see what the fleet manager has done in that regard, just looking forward into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think it's a comment on that too, as being a person that lives an hour and 20 minutes away from Scone. We need to remember too that before we commit our council to purchasing all electric vehicles, there needs to be some certainly technological improvements made regarding, because if you have a vehicle at Castless or Merriwar, and it has to have that lengthy time of recharging, I think that the idea, I think, has got great merit, but I think we just need to be careful, because we're going to have vehicles at Merriwar can't travel to Scone or get partly, or they may have to go back and recharge half an hour out of the day. It's not practical to do that, and I think we need to be careful, because we may be trying to gain an advantage one way, but it's just not practical at this stage. And I think technology is going to change a lot, but I would be very strongly advising against. It's always around town, around the areas, and that's where a lot of these electric cars have gained prominence, is in the highly populated areas where they don't have big distances to travel. So if we are going to commit our shire, our council, to an idea that is not properly scoped, I guess, but is in the area where that it needs to be, more technology needs to take over, I think. But the principle is fine.
With respect, Mr. Chair, we as a council, we have resolved to be net zero in our emissions by 2030. So we do have to look at this. And there are other countries now actually legislating that they won't have petrol or diesel vehicles on their road by 2030. And some of the Scandinavian countries are earlier. So it is something we do need to look at. And I take your point that we're not there yet, but we need to be. And we do need to be asking the state and federal governments what they're going to do to help us be able to recharge the vehicles. Just as you say, we don't have that infrastructure yet, but we do need to be thinking about this, which is why I keep raising it.
Provided that doesn't negate what our council will put us to an economic disadvantage, I think, at this stage. We can't do that.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the challenge there and where it needs to go to the Corporate Services Committee is making the whole of life costs affordable. We wouldn't want to go down a certain technological path and find out that it's actually blowing out our overall costs when you take in the servicing and maintenance. I mean, a lot of our fleet, most of our fleet gets serviced here at the depot. I don't know if they have the skills or expertise to service an electric vehicle. These are the things that have to be teased out before we started investing heavily in electric vehicles.
Okay, look, I'll draw that to a close, because I think we all agree that we need to make, when technology starts to change, that it is certainly something that can be done, but it has to be done efficiently and economically. So I'd like to draw it to a close. We've all put our points of view. Turn to page 3, 49 to 96. No comments on page. Turn over to page 4, please. 97 to 147. No further comment or questions. Page 5, which is 148 to 196. Could I ask 179, Bow Rural Fire Service Shed? Al, it's good to see you. Do you have any comment on that?
Surveyors are going out there, I think today or tomorrow, to pick up some more information and repeg corners.
Right. Okay.
A contractor has been engaged to put an access road in and fence the site, and I think they're turning up towards the end of this month.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
So it's just preliminary work.
Yeah.
This financial year.
Okay, all right. Any further questions on page 5? If not, we'll turn over to page 6, 197 to 244. Um, 225, the Scone, the skate, 224, really. The Merriwar Skate Park, project complete, final costings, there's no change. The amount of people that have used that, especially over the weekend and during the holidays, is phenomenal. And it's just a great little hub for Merriwall. Are we expecting any more costs to come in?
Through the chair, no.
Right, okay, it's all done. Thank you.
Through, Mr. Chair, with respect to skate parks, the one for Scone, where's that up to? That's line item 225.
Yes.
Have
Can't
we made
answer.
a decision?
There's no funds allocated. All right. We'll have to
So
go for
is-
grant funding for that.
So just through you, Mr. Chair, is that, are we still waiting on what we're going to do with the patch of land near the bypass? Is that what we're waiting on?
Could anybody answer that?
Yeah,
Okay, we'll take the one on notice then, please. Thank you.
Mr Chair, 209, Moon flat shade sales. I see that's out of the budget, fair enough. There's a big tree leaning over there that Ausgrid did an agreement they were going to remove. A bad apple tree leaning over the playground equipment. The last director had it arranged that Ausgrid were going to actually remove it. Can we follow that up? Because if it does go, it's
So through the chair, it obviously hasn't been removed yet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Page 6. Let's turn to page 7, 245 to 291. Line item 240, the next page, sorry, 244. We're on page 7, are we? Yes. The Merriwall Pool painting, was that going to be included in some of the upgrade works that were brought to, that have been put in on a CRM? Sam, could you comment on that, please? Because it hardly, if the repair has to take place, you wouldn't be painting it until those repairs have taken place on the actual pool.
Through the
Would that be
chair, the
correct?
pool got painted prior to the season opening, so
Okay.
the pool's been painted, yes.
And the other works that were identified, that, have you got any update on that, when those things could happen?
It'll be through the off-season, Chair.
Yeah, okay. They're quite considerable. Some of them were urgent, I suggest. Some of the, perhaps the painting and the screws loose in the roof, perhaps not, but some of the other ones needed attention. Yeah, okay.
Noted.
Thank you.
Mr Chair, 277, Sam, another street causeway upgrade. Are we still waiting for the state to give us a,
Through the chair, yes, we are.
Good gracious, mate.
maybe if we're meeting with a person this week, that may be one of the things. That's just gone on too long. Yeah, can we document that so we make sure we mention that?
Yes,
Thursday?
indeed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, 270, the airport development, and so what I was referring to before. So it's one of the business owners has had something dug up in front of his business. What's happening there?
Alan, are you able to answer that? Yeah, you better come up on the mic because it's pretty important. Yeah, well, you better come and sit up here, Al. There's a chair up here for you.
There's a piece of apron adjacent to one of the businesses at the airport which wasn't draining correctly. The adjoining owner and their leasee asked us to look at the issue. We did some survey work, had to do a bit of redesign, and that work was done in the last few days. So it's all been fixed up.
So it's all So it's all been rectified. So
Yes,
their
yes.
planes can come out. And
No time during the work were planes not able to get in or get out. And that was made evident to the business at the time.
so did they think they couldn't get their planes out?
They claimed that.
Sorry?
They made that claim.
They made that claim, but some work had initiated before we got to speak to them, and that's the underlying issue. We made plans to meet with the contractor at a certain time, but he did some prep work prior to that. He did some saw cuts in the seal. So the people adjoining just didn't know what was going on. That's the underlying problem. The work was of a nature and scale which was relatively small, which means it was able to be fixed quickly. It was last Friday, it was all prepped, and at the end of Friday, they could have taken a plane over it, and there's always a way around it, even when the work was being done. And then yesterday, it was sealed. So, yesterday it was sealed.
So they did have some time where they couldn't operate their business?
No.
But they did think that, though, for a short time.
Their first thoughts were, but within minutes, that information came back.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, so they're happy now? Is everything all sorted?
I don't know if they're happy as such. We've had a couple of complaints over the last couple of days about their concerns in regard to how the works have been done, but I haven't had a complaint in the last 24 hours. So Alan was the last I think spoke to them yesterday afternoon, which I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, I spoke to the business owner there yesterday afternoon. The proprietor who runs the leasee, who runs the business. We spoke amicably. It's quite civil. Introduced Chris. They were quite civil to us.
So it was just no, not just, but it was a miscommunication. Is that how this happened?
Yes, that's probably the best way to describe
it. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, can I just add to that? I mean, these particular owners out there, this job was done on their request to make it better for their businesses. We've got a gentleman working out at the airport all the time from nearly daylight till dark. And I'm quite sure what I understand, he's been communicating very, very well with all those businesses. So I don't know what you're going to do to satisfy.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a comment. Thank you. An explanation, comment. Okay, thank you. Page 7, are we any further comment or questions? We'll turn over to page 8, line items 292 to 337. There'll be no further comment or questions. Turn to page 9. Um, 351 and 352 Mackenzie Street, number 1. Are these to do with the sheds? Sam, do you know anything about that?
Sorry, say that again, Chair. 350.
Yeah, which one? Mackenzie at 351 and 352. That would nearly have to be, wouldn't it? Surely it wouldn't have there. Yeah. Mackenzie Street number 2, Mackenzie Street number 1. Is that, or is that to do with the water? Yeah, that sounds a bit more like it. I think I did. Yeah.
I'll have to take that one on notice.
Okay. All right. All right then. Any further questions or comments on page 9? Let's turn over to page 10. 385 to 433. Questions or comments? If not, we will finish on page 11. 434 to 454. Do we have any questions there? If there being no further questions, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for ISC 4.4.
Moved.
Moved. Councillor Collison, second. I'll second from the Driscoll. Any dissension? There being no dissension, the matter is passed. Can we turn over now to page 40? ISC 4.5, Village Reticulation and Murrurundi Reserve Reservoir Monthly Report. Chris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Within the last month, we've completed all of the design and costing work with ADW Johnson. That contract's actually been closed out. Very happy with the work that they've been done and I guess what it's allowed us, how it's allowed us to progress through this project. Since last meeting, there was a council have supported proceeding with a rural type supply system for the villages. And the next step is that we're going to the Water Authority, DPI, I guess run it by them, what we want to do, and see if we have their support for that as well. And that being the case, then we'll go out to community consultation after that.
Okay. And will we be seeking the support of seeking some funding for it, or how's that going to be? How's it going to be funded?
What we're proposing is funded from within the project, the existing project budget. So we'll have round figures about $4.5 million to spend on what we can afford and what the best way to spend that money across the 3 villages is. There are some sections where there's a lot of money spent for very little return. And by return, I mean there might only be 2 or 3 potential houses to connect or properties to connect. So there's a good chance that those will not be included. But there's some other areas where it's central to town and there's a higher probability of people getting connections. So those areas, will probably go ahead. I'm speaking in levels of certainty and uncertainty here because at this stage nothing has been decided. And probably the only thing that is decided is that there will be a water fill point in each of the 3 villages.
Okay, and to go further, were you suggesting that some of them will be, supposing then that there is not the take-up which would be expected, so does that mean that the funds, it's going to go ahead with what we have now, and that fund, that money, where did it come from? Was it a grant funding? I had no idea it was.
Yes, look, it's part of the Scone to Murrumbidgee pipeline project.
Right.
There was a portion of that funding was to go towards villages.
Right.
And on page 40 on section 1.2 is a breakdown of the project funding. Right. And on that you can see which fund the money has come from, and that includes the third line of that is co-contributions from council against that funding for this portion, the villages portion, and there's also a council proposed loans there of 480,000, and then there's a safe and secure water program funding, which was 60-40 government and council. So that we're left with about $4.5 million in the bank, which is, if you look in section 3, project spend, it's about 4,686 there, but yeah, round figures. So at the moment, that's the kitty of money that we have to spend in the best way that we can.
Through the chair, that includes the reservoir.
Oh, yes, I beg your pardon. Sorry. That, that does include the reservoir, a lot of which has already been spent.
Well, when it's raining, you don't need water as much. However, when it stops raining, you need water. So I think we've agreed that we would proceed with the current project. The money is there; it's been allocated, and I think that it will eventually be taken up in a much greater way because of the fact that water is such a precious item. Okay, anything further on for you?
Just the Murrumbidgee res, the construction there is going very well. The walls are all built and the structure for the roof is being built, and the roofing materials are arriving on site and will go on shortly. And we're expecting that to be completed in May and commissioned in May.
That's a good news story. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. I see 4.5. Councillor Driscoll, second. Second, Councillor, our Mayor, Councillor Collison. Any dissension? There is no dissension. The recommendation is passed. We'd like now to turn over to page 45. ISC 4.6 MR358 Willow Tree Road Upgrade. Gavin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially what's happened in the past month, we've received 2 concept designs for the works. Option 1, if you read through it, essentially using the same route, which would not provide any key benefits and at a substantial larger cost. Option 2 incorporated cutting around 1,700, which would in effect reduce the first slip area, but didn't take into any consideration the further 2 areas that we're quite concerned about. So currently GHD are developing a third option based on our review comments. GHD have also indicated that the survey that we have had done isn't quite wide enough at the moment, and that's due to generally the terrain and the vegetation, because it was done via a line of sight instrument. So we've employed GHD to undertake a LiDAR survey, so that's flying drones and then using lasers to pick up the terrain. That's at a cost of about $25,000 and will be completed this week. Following the rain events a couple of weeks ago, we also had Douglas Partners undertake another inspection. Essentially, their report says that the road shouldn't be opened. There's been further significant deterioration, particularly around chainage 24 to 2600, which sees the cracking now extending onto the inside table drain. There's a trench-like crack that's roughly a foot wide and up to 150 mil deep at the moment, which is continuing to get worse again. Unfortunately, we've still got some of the public driving through there. So we have had moved barriers since the last meeting, and evidently they thought they could move those barriers, which they did, and drove through anyway. So we've got advice from New South Wales Police, and we'll be installing security cameras and surveillance cameras this week. And anyone not obeying those road rules and road signs, that information will be passed on to the New South Wales Police for processing. Apart from that, apart from the LiDAR information, it's been pushed the program back about 3 to 4 weeks. So it's not a big change at the moment, but that information is essential for them to complete a detailed design.
Any comments regarding Gavin's?
Mr. Chair, just one on the cameras, Gavin. Is that going to be immediately released to pre-warn people? That's enough.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. We've already done a draft media release.
Yep.
I'll have that discussion further with Phil and Greg. We've also got a community meeting next week, so that'll be a media release and advice for that community meeting, and also we have a contact list for all those people that want advice or updates for the project as well.
Right, that could be a good one for the radio next week, because it's unfortunate, but the last thing we want is an incident on that road with people moving barriers.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I was going to mention the community consultation session, which is next week on the 21st, which we'll mention there. But this avenue to potentially prosecute by the police is based on information that we pass on. So we'll install the cameras this week, but no one's going to be getting fines until we are comfortable that we've got that message out ahead of time.
That's good. Just on the briefing next week at Marywall, we're going to sit down and go through that and make it a bit better this time.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Chair. We've advertised and we've identified, I guess, some of the learnings from the last meeting in regard to both audio-visual issues and some of the management of the meeting. We've scheduled the meeting over 2 sessions this time to give us a bit more time to sort of, I guess, deal with people coming in and out of the room. Having said that, we've had very low response rates. We've only got about 7 for one meeting and 8 for the other, so 15 people across 2 meetings. That could pick up as we get closer to the meeting date and we might see a spike, but we're certainly not seeing the same numbers as we did last time. And Phil and I only had a chat yesterday about making sure that we've bought new audio equipment, so sound should be much better in that room. It doesn't lend itself well to sound at all at that facility, so we've got some new equipment that we'll trial over there for that. And we've been talking about how we can make the visual display a little bit more, I guess, larger is the biggest issue, because at the last time it was quite a small display.
Yes, thank you. Yes, having played in that hall, we used to call it the tomb, because everything just went straight up the top. However, look, I'd like to also say that I believe last time, and it was a win session as well, and I would like to recommend to the chair that whoever's conducting the chairman, that it's a MR 358 information session, not a win session. We should keep it back to that, because otherwise it can just, the MR 358 problems are put in the background when we just want to have a go. So I'd like to suggest that, and I strongly urge that whoever's the chairman to take that into consideration. Yes, and also, are we going to ask the officials to stand up and approach the mic when they ask a question, because that was something that was very strongly condemned, the unprofessional way in which it was handled. And I make very clear that I thought Greg endeavoured to chair it in a very professional way and brought things together. And it was such a contrast to the way that you, Greg, chaired that meeting and endeavoured to try and bring all people in, but I felt that we were let down by the other officials.
No, thanks for the comments. Certainly that's part of the strategy moving forward. I'll continue to probably chair that meeting unless there's a councillor that wishes to do so. And I'll take on note your point about trying to herd the cats and keep the matters to 358. That's a very difficult process during that meeting, but we'll do as best we can. And yes, we've identified some of the failings from last time in regard to just the way some of the consultants responded. So yes, we'll talk to the consultants about that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just with respect to number 8 and the options that GHD have provided, and that there's a third one to come.
Excuse me, could you tell us which page?
I beg your pardon. Yes, 46. So it's following on from 45, where GHD have provided following reports and documentation. So it's number 8. So there are 2 options here, and then there's a third one mentioned. So who will be looking at that and making a decision?
Through the chair, it's part of the project control group. They all get comment. They all are forwarded those plans. That includes council staff, Infrastructure New South Wales, Transport for New South Wales, and Public Works Advisory as well.
We were asked to note the report and note the information. I do agree, after reading both of those, that a third design and risk should be forthcoming before we make a decision on that. Just so anyway, when that comes forward, I believe that we would be able to make an informed, more informed decision, and then a recommendation, of course. So we're all happy with that. We've all looked through, and yeah, it's certainly a big task that will be needed to rectify that road. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for ISC 4.6?
Moved. Second.
Moved, Councillor Driscoll, seconded our Mayor. Any dissension? There being no dissension, we accept the recommendation. Now, if we like to turn over to page 56, ISC 4.7, answer to councillor questions. I'll start with Councillor Abbott. Are you happy with the answers they're given? Thank you. Could I ask that this is in my question, point 1, the traffic counter placed on Yarrandai Road, has that been able to be done? Does anybody know?
Through the chair, we were getting out there as soon as it was available. I'm not sure if it's gone out there
It's not
yet.
available yet.
Mr Chair, I thought the decision on that was not while the road was in bad condition. They wanted to put the counters on when the road was in good condition.
Correct. That is still the intention, is the next time that it gets graded. Yeah, correct.
Okay. And I'd like to comment on point 7, council-owned land behind the western side of Collins Street, Scully Close, be inspected and tidied up. I inspected that this morning as I came over. Yeah, look, Sam, thanks for doing that. The other question that I have is that an actual building block on the northern side of the section that you cleaned back? Because the growth is right up to those 2 new houses. There was a fence going across there, I noted. You know anything about that? Because we're going to have the same problem with the 2 new houses there, with the amount of material that's growing right up alongside the fence.
So Chair, the buildings you're talking about, are they boundary that property?
It's down on bounding the Collins Street and Scully Close. So it would be technically, I'd suggest, in Collins Street.
Yep, so that would be the residents' responsibility to clear from there.
Has that, do you know if that block has been sold?
I'm not aware. I'd have to take that on notice.
Could we find that out, please? Okay. Yeah, all right. Can we do that?
Yep.
Please. I guess that we'll have considerable concern, because it's when I walked through it there now, it was almost, over a metre high, pretty thick stuff. Yeah, okay. All right. I'm moving a second for the acceptance of those IC 4.7, the answer to our questions. Seconded. There being no dissension, the recommendation is accepted. And do we have any councillor questions? I'll start with you, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. So my first question is, and I have asked this before, about footpaths for every street in our shire, in the urban areas. When can we do this? I know it's grant, I've been told it's grant dependent, but we really do need footpaths on every single street for vulnerable road users who otherwise you see using the roads with their pushchairs and their, wheelchairs. So yes, I'm asking that question again. When can we do footpaths for every single street, urban street in the Shire? That's my first question.
So through the chair, I guess I'll try to answer that. We do have a footpath renewal program, and we spend about 60 grand a year roughly on footpath renewal. So I guess that's what the budget's allowed for at this point in time, and we'll continue to grow on the network moving forward.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is that I know we rely on property owners paying for some of that or putting some money towards that. And it is a problem in the areas that are less affluent, because the people who live there will definitely not have the money to fund or put anything towards a footpath. And then sometimes the property owners aren't so inclined. So when you're walking in some of the areas, when you're handing out leaflets or whatever you're doing, when you're door knocking, you do notice that there are areas without footpaths and people having to use the road if they don't have cars. So I understand that we have a budget. Our budget's not big enough. We need to spend a lot more across the Shire.
Through the chair, you may be correct, but our replacement program is based on use. So, the high traffic areas are the priority, and then it works its way down.
It is something that I'm really concerned about. That's that question. Then my second question is actually back to the Scone revitalisation and why it's not included in these papers, and it's included in it's its own committee. And then can you just remind me, does it get reported in the corporate services papers? Is that where it appears?
I'll have to ask the general manager there.
My recollection is the minutes come direct to council. I don't think it goes to the Corporate Services Committee before coming to council. It goes direct to council.
So like with the airport, it used to be in this, but now it's in the corporate services, and some of the other things that it sort of get covered. Like there are quite a few things in infrastructure that are covered that also get reported on other committees.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the history. Can I suggest that maybe because the CBD revitalisation is its own committee and is currently being, I guess, scoped up at present, it is a committee that has its minutes recorded, then reported to council. Once the project is finalised and the committee is disbanded, I would suggest then that the progress of the CBD Main Street and the revitalisation works would simply come to this committee as a update on the report, like the other projects. The airport's a bit like that now. Now that the airport design and I guess methodology has been agreed to by the committee, it's now in progress and it comes straight to this committee. I'm suspecting that's been the logic behind why some reports go direct to council, and once they have been finalised, agreed by council, it then comes to this committee just as part of the progress.
And is that the same for all through you, Mr. Chair, all the revitalisation committees?
I couldn't speak for all of them. I'd have to check, but I suspect that logic's been used in the past for that process. I'll check that.
Thank you. And then my next two more questions, actually coming out of the answers to these questions. So the answer to my question 3, which was on page 57. So where will the community garden be? Will we end up having a community garden? If the space near the bypass looks like that might be for an off-leash dog park, do we still have plans? Are we still considering a community garden?
Through the chair, we'll take that on notice. Yeah.
We are?
I'll take that question on
Okay.
notice. Yeah, I won't answer that now.
Thank you. And then with respect to the answer to question 6 on page 57, with respect to glyphosate, I note that just recently, so I'm asking again about when council will actually ban it for council actually using it, that Bayer, who are the company that now own glyphosate, are going to take the matter further in the US. So they have accepted that the guy, I cannot remember his name, but Dwayne, can't remember his name, his settlement, they're not going to fight that. So it is something that we do need to worry about for our own staff who use glyphosate and the health issues that are attached to it. So again, I'd just like to see when we're going to stop using it as a council. Thank you.
As I think I said last time, and I think Sam's looking at the report, and I've asked him about that only a couple of weeks ago, so we'll bring that report back. I'm not in a position yet to say that report will say that we're going to stop using it. It's going to provide a report on the various risks and options that council has. It's not necessarily going to just immediately go to a ban. So just wanted to, I guess, position myself as to where that report's likely to land. It's not going to get to that stage yet.
Okay. Councillor Driscoll. Turn your phone. Thank you.
Just can I ask the mayor something? The Rural Road, has it got potholes in it, the tar part?
Which part of the Rural Road, Councillor?
Oh, where you going past Newgate, past there somewhere on the corner there somewhere?
I couldn't tell you. As far as I know, the general manager and I did do an inspection up there, and they were going to go back and fill some of the bad holes, but
Right,
I mean, you'd have to ask them to
no, just somebody was saying about them the other day, that was all.
Can I suggest, Councillor Driscoll, you get them to put an action request in like everyone else does?
Yeah. And what else I was going to ask you? Oh, I've forgotten now. Oh, Abercrombie Terrace, just off the road, you go past not Abercrombie Terrace, Shannon Close. Number 14 mows out the front there on the footpath. And number 14, after she does it, he goes and dumps all his rubbish grass into a drain there. And what she's frightened of, when one of the councillors come there to do something there and she doesn't turn that little mower over. Because what he's doing, he's filling up the drain that's there. It's an open drain, it is.
We'll investigate. Sam or his team will have a
Yeah,
look
well,
at that.
the one that on 14 knows about it more. And she said that the fella at number 12 puts his grass into that drain. And that's what she's worried about, because you can't see it once you put the grass in the drain.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr Chair, I have got one more.
Yes.
Sam, northern end of Park Street, of the Liverpool Street in Park Street, in the garden there, go out of Liverpool Street, go north in Park. Apparently the residents have done some cleaning up there. I forgot all about it. They left quite a pile of debris. So they've got out and weeded their garden. Any chance we could get that picked up?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you.
Do that.
Thank you. Well, I have a couple of questions. Water pressure in Scully Close. It seems that when there's a power outage, they lack any kind of water pressure at all. In fact, it was taking 20 minutes to fill up their toilet receptacle. So look, what can be done about that? I did tell the particular person that it wouldn't be done tomorrow. However, what arrangements have we got? It's in a CRM too, I put it in, but what arrangements can be made? Can be looked at and addressed so that there's 2 more houses being built on that Scully Close. There's another 2 proposed. So that will mean that there's probably 7 or 8 houses. It's servicing 7 or 8 houses.
Through the chair, I'm aware of this issue. It is, only a concern. I guess it just goes from normal pressure to low pressure in a power outage. It's effectively the high zone area of Merriwall, so it could be solved by a larger high zone reservoir, which isn't something that we have planned for construction anytime soon, but that would be the solution. I think we did look into other options for generators and other such things, but there wasn't a way to make it work in a practical sense that would come into effect. At the moment, it would only work on a planned power outage, not an unplanned.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I think that would be understood. I suggest. Is it possible for a generator to be put there at a power outage? I thought we had a generator station.
For planned outages, it can be done.
Yeah. Could that be put on noted, please? Because the power outages that we are having, quite from lightning strikes, they are planned, so that we could know, and that it would not. It'd be quite possible for us to do that. So could you make a note of that, please?
Through the chair, from my understanding, that was a previous action to have a generator available for planned outages. So if that's not occurring,
it has not been occurring. No. Okay. On the corner of Dutton and Mackenzie Street, we've got a lot of lovely trees there, but they just need trimming, especially the one that is on the corner of Dutton and Mackenzie Street. It blocks out the view, especially as you're travelling and want to make that as a right-hand turn. It's quite dangerous. Could we have that looked at, please? And also was brought up at our committee meeting last night, the speed limit. Now that we've got such, the skate park at Merriwall is very popular with toilets and driver reviver. Could we have the speed limit reduced to 50 kilometres, which would be going back onto the main, I think it's Beddington Street, King George Avenue then, reduced from 60 to 50 because of the, like the heavy vehicles that have come around that corner. I think that would have to go back to the committee, the traffic committee. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that'd have to go to the traffic committee and then
go to the RMS.
Transport New South Wales.
Yeah, Transport, yes.
Yeah. We've recently extended that speed zone. I thought it was just around the corner there. I'll just double check for
Would you
you.
mind? Yeah, it needs to be probably after coming down the hill, you cross a small bridge. It needs to be the 50 zone from there on. So therefore, when any vehicle, it's not only trucks, it's cars too. Cars are travelling a much higher speed than a lot of those trucks that come around there. And the road is wide, accept that, but its use is being increased by the facilities that are there. If you could look at that, please, and perhaps take it to the traffic committee. Yeah. I'm not sure whether this should, the VIC centre opening hours, it was discussed last night, if we could extend them to continue our accreditation from 10 to 4. Then the amount of information and the amount of people requiring information there at that centre has certainly increased. And the 10 till 2 is just not enough. But however, to return to the 9 to 5, we think is not practical. But if we could extend those hours to 4 p.m, the number of inquiries, in fact, that came in afterwards, closing at 2, would, I think we need to look at that.
Just, Mr. Chair, we'll take that on notice, but it won't get recorded as part of this meeting because it's not really an infrastructure matter. But we'll pass that on to the Director of Corporate Services to review.
Okay, all right. I think we've discussed all the others. Thank you. That's all I have. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? All right. I'll declare the meeting closed then. Thank you very much. And